Muy buenas tardes a todos, muchas gracias por venir esta tarde aquí a la Aeroteca para dar una conferencia del señor Michael Napier, que es piloto de Tornado, y nos va a contar sus experiencias. Con ustedes ahora, el señor Michael Napier.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry to say that I do not speak Spanish. I joined the Royal Air Force in 1978 and while I was at university in London, and started off my flying career on this, which is the Bulldog, and then moved on after that to the Royal Air Force College, which is a cramble up in northeast England, and flew this, which is the Jet Propulsor Mark V. Then from that on to this, which is the Hawk. I did my advanced flying training on that and tactical weapons training also. And having finished my training, I then started flying the Tornado, initially in England for training and then out to Germany, and I did 3 operational tours flying in Germany from 1985 on to about 1995. The all-weather and night capability, the heart of that system is the terrain following radar, which the pilot is in charge of. And the pilot can set the autopilot to fly following the terrain following radar. Heights down to 350 feet, which is what we use in peacetime, but during the Gulf War they're able to fly down to heights as low as 200 feet at night. The obvious characteristic of the Tornado is the swing wings, variable geometry. Theoretically, they can sweep anything from 25 degrees, which is fully forward, all the way back to 67 degrees, which is all the way back. But in practice, we tended just to use 3 different sets. 25 degree sweep fully forward for takeoff and landing, giving a landing speed at around about 150 knots. Also for manoeuvring at low speed. Medium range, normal cruising, 45 degrees, and then all the way back, 67 wing, gives the airplane very smooth ride, about 500 knots, and now certainly up to about 700 knots in it, and it flies very, very smoothly with the wings all. So if you had 2 1,500 litre tanks, then that was enough fuel to fly for about 1 3/4 hours at low level, with the bigger tanks, which are shown on these photographs, about 2.5 hours, 2 1/4 hours. On the outboard pylons were the electronic warfare pods, and on this, the left-hand wing, is a Skyshadow pod, which is used for jamming or for electronic deception of radars. On the other wing, here is the BOZ107 Chaff Flare dispenser. You can see the flares there, the little round white circles, and they come out and take away heat-seeking missiles. And just ahead of that, where I've marked, there's a door which opens, which puts bundles of chaff, which is little short strips of glass fibre, which will help jam radars. The weapons, which are mainly 1,000-pound bombs, are loaded under the aircraft. Normally all fit would be 4 1,000-pound bombs, or you could put 8 underneath, or the alternative would be 2 JP233 runway denial weapons. And later on we got on to flying laser-guided bombs, and you could get very well designed and quite comfortable cockpit, dominated in the centre by the head-up display, or HUD, and underneath that the moving map display, and those are the 2 main flying instruments. On each side are electronic screens. One is radar warning, the other is the E-scope, which is used with the terrain following radar. And then on either side, the flight instruments. Now we use those as standby instruments. We always use the head-up display as our primary flying instrument, and on the right-hand side you can see the engine displays as well. This is the rear cockpit, where the navigator lives. That again dominated by in the centre there by the radar display and the weapon aiming system. And then on either side 2 television screens, multi-purpose screens, which were the way that the navigator communicated with the aircraft computer. Okay, this is just to remind you about the Cold War in the mid-80s. And you can see on one side Warsaw Pact, on the other NATO, and they meet in Germany. And this is the central region, as it was called, in Germany. On the right-hand side over East Germany and Czechoslovakia, you can see the Soviet army all ready to come and invade. And on the left-hand side, NATO. Divided, these are the army divisions. CENTAG to the south, which is basically American and German. To the north, NORTHAG, the Northern Army Group, which was got the Dutch, the Belgians, the British and the Germans. This is what RAF Bruggen looked like. 4 squadrons there, each on the corners of the base. And the job there was strike, which is nuclear operations, and also the range of the aircraft was such that we could cover ground attack targets in Germany, Eastern Germany, and up to Western Poland. Our day-to-day training reflected our low-level role. We could fly over most of Germany down to 500 feet, and then in certain areas we could fly down to 250 feet. A typical flight would start off with us planning for about 2 hours, and then going out to the aircraft, which would be in their hardened shelters. You can see the concrete shelter here. We normally operate in 2 aircraft as a pair, sometimes just 1, sometimes 3 or 4, but most of the time as 2. Take off in close formation, head out because the base is right on the Dutch border, into Holland, then back round and head out into the low-flying system in Germany. After we'd gone through there, we'd cross the ridge and then into the low-flying areas where we had the opportunity. At that stage, we'd practice attacks on things like, as I mentioned, the missile sites, bridges, or military installations out in the low-flying areas. One of the things I mentioned about dropping bombs at low level is the explosion and all the debris that's thrown up. And if you've got 2 airplanes, clearly there's got to be a gap between one flying over the same target. So what we used to practice was splitting. So one airplane would run through the target, the other would go off, and then come in from a different angle about 20 seconds later. And then back to Bruggen, and if we had any fuel left, then we'd practice flying circuits, and we'd usually land about an hour and 3/4 after taking off. Apart from flying in Germany, twice a year we went to Decimomanu, known as Deci, in Sardinia, and we went for 2 reasons. The first was for armament practice camp, which was practicing air-to-ground weapon dropping on the, or bombing on the range at Capo Frasca. We'd also go once a year to Goose Bay in Labrador, and there we could do operational low flying down to 100 feet if the weather was good. If the weather was bad or it was at night time, we could use the terrain following radar. The highlight for all of us for training would come round about once every 2 years would be taking part in exercise Red Flag, which is at Nellis Air Force Base just outside Las Vegas in Nevada, USA. So this was as close as you could get to going to real war. This range also had telemetry, so you could actually replay each mission afterwards and learn the lessons from it. You can see the hills there outlined, and then the red and blue splodges there are aircraft going across. It's quite tricky because the actual probe is out to the side of the pilot's view, so he can't actually look at it at the same time as he's doing it. And also the basket that the probe goes into moves away as the aircraft gets closer because of the bow wave, so you have to guess where it's going to be and then head into open space, really. This is the airfield. This is an attack on some aircraft parked at the far end there. Here you can see there's big salt flats, and then the mountain ridges sort of breaking them up, so you raced across the flat bits and then had to get through the mountains. The small valleys become really important for cover.
En nom del Parc Eòlic de Catalunya, li volem agrair al senyor Napier la seva amabilitat per haver vingut fins aquí.